Hello, I'm Jessica Weifel, and I would like to welcome you to the instructional video for Part 6 of the Schiepjes Festival of Lights Crochet Along. In this video, we will be joining our motifs. The written pattern is available on the Schiepjes website. A link will be in the description. This video is for both UK and US terms, as we will be using a slip stitch join. I am going to be demonstrating the blocking and joining of the upper left corner of the blanket. I recommend washing and blocking your motifs before joining. This will help your motifs to fit together nicely and should help prevent excessive tightness on the join. I am using this wool wash. I like it because it is scentless, but you can use what you prefer. Since I will be soaking the motifs to wash them, I will need to remove my paper tags. I'm going to start by arranging my motifs according to the blanket layout, then take a photo of the motifs with a phone so that the layout can be replicated without the tags. Now I can remove the tags and let them soak according to the directions on my wool wash. Now that the motifs have soaked long enough, I am removing them from their bath, gently pressing out the water with my hands. Then using some towels to remove more water. This took quite a while, so I'm going to speed this up a bit. Once all the motifs are out of the bath, I start to arrange them on my blocking mat as in the photo that I took. Blocking them in the same arrangement as the final blanket will make sure that they all fit together just right when you go to join them. In this video, I am going to be demonstrating the blocking and joining of the upper left corner of the blanket. If you have a large enough blocking mat, you can block your whole blanket at once, or it can be blocked in sections. However, all motifs should be blocked before you begin the join. Now we are ready to pin. I'm going to give myself a little extra space. Then start by pinning out this square in the bottom left corner. I'm starting with this one because I noticed that it is one of my slightly larger motifs, so I will pin it with only a little stretch and block all the other motifs up to this size. If you have blocking mats with a grid on them, it is quite helpful for pinning out your motifs evenly. I live in the United States, so my blocking mats have a grid on them in inches because that is what I found back when I bought them. So your grid might line up differently than mine. If you don't have a grid on your blocking mats, you can also put a ruler along the side of where you are pinning, or even pin a string on either end to make a straight line as a guide. I generally pin the corners of the motif first and then start placing pins along the edges. I tend to use excessive pins, so you will see me place a lot of them. I also like to push the motif from a few rounds in when pinning, so that I am not just pulling on the edges. On the motifs with back post stitches near the edges, I will generally push from the little ridge formed by the back post stitches. Once the first motif has been pinned, I'm going to start pinning the motif right next to it, stretching it out to match in size. Then I'm going to continue pinning all the motifs in the same manner. I spent a lot of time pinning my motifs in place, and you really don't need to be as particular about this as I am being here. I was not as consistent with my gauge on these pieces as I would have liked. Part of this is that I made many of these motifs at very different times, and some of them while filming or taking photos. Apparently, I was tense while filming, as all of those motifs are smaller than the others. So while you watch me pin these out, I want to say that I hope that you have been enjoying this crochet along and have found these videos helpful. I put a lot of work into them. They're not perfect, but I'm still proud of them. If you have made it this far, I know that you have also put a lot of work into your crochet along blanket, and I hope that it's been enjoyable. After I have finished pinning and adjusting everything, I'm going to take this and put it under a fan overnight to let it fully dry. It's the next morning now, and I live in a dry climate, so my motifs are dry. Before I take out the pins, I'm going to use my photo to check that I haven't mixed up any pieces while they were wet and put all the tags back on. Then I will start removing all the pins. You can see that the motifs have relaxed a little bit as I took out the pins, but they still fit together quite well. And finally, we are ready to begin our join. I'm going to be upfront here and tell you that some people find this join to be tedious. I considered many other joins when I was designing this blanket. However, I felt that the results from this join were the best and that it was worth the effort. I recommend taking it slow and double-checking your work often. And if you do find that this join is just not worth the effort for you, it can be replaced with any joining method that doesn't add extra space between the motifs. Along with the pattern pieces this week, there will be a joining schematic. This might look a little overwhelming at first, so I'm going to walk through it. The given joining schematic describes an order and path of joining with the following goals. First, whenever possible, we are going to make a continuous straight line through the blanket. We already dealt with enough ends, and there is no need to add any more than necessary. Second, joining lines that are straight will be made on top of or after lines that bend. This is subtle, but it helps keep the sharp points and angular geometry that we just created. The schematic is given in 6 parts as well as combined, and the colors are coded in rainbow order. We start with the red path. This is one continuous path around the blanket. It is first because it has the most bends. Making it first does make a subtle but noticeable difference in how the geometry of the blanket looks when finished. Take it slow and check your labels as you go. Next, we work the orange paths. These are 4 continuous lines that are worked from the outside of the blanket in. Make sure that the joins from the previous path are not twisted when you cross them. The yellow paths are the same as the orange, but along the opposite points of the star, plus 2 overlapping zigzag paths in each corner. Once the yellow paths are completed, most of your motifs will be connected to each other. I find joining a bit easier from here, but there is more bulk to work around. For the green paths, we are working 4 lines all the way through the blanket and finally connecting through the center. Then we will start to join a few of those little sections that just can't be connected continuously between diamond motifs. The blue path describes 8 completely straight lines from the outside to the center. And finally, the purple connects the last bits in the corners and sides. For joining, we will be using the zipper join or flat slip stitch join. If you have a Metropolis or Organicon kit, you will have a dark gray yarn for joining to resemble the night sky. However, my camera is having a little trouble showing the stitches well, so I'm going to demonstrate the method with a lighter gray yarn. Hold the motifs you wish to join right side up and flat with the join edge together. Find the corner of the first motif and locate the second chain. Insert your hook from front to back in the back loop only. On the other motif, locate the corner and insert your hook from front to back in the back loop only of the first chain in the corner. Hold the yarn in the back. Yarn over the hook and pull through both loops on the hook to make a slip stitch. Now we are going to repeat this all along the sides of the motif. When you get to the end, don't fasten off unless you are completing a path. This join makes a very clean line and is very flat. Pay attention to your tension while making your slip stitches. If you find that you are making them too tight, try going up a hook size. While joining along the paths, you are going to crochet together many pairs of motifs in a row. Don't add any chains between the motifs, just repeat the process of finding the corners and continue along the next motifs. Here I am finding the second chain in the corner of my diamond, and the first chain in the corner of my triangle. Sometimes it helps to rotate your crochet hook a little as you pull it through the two loops. Now you can see that we have completed joining the second pair. Normally, you will continue to add more pieces to your line here, just keep checking the schematic. From here, all the joining is the same. It's just a matter of following the schematic and taking your time. But I am going to show you a few more examples of joining under different conditions that you will come across when joining the blanket. Your lines are going to cross paths many times. Here I will be joining across this path, so I will be adding back in diamond 5. Make extra sure that you don't have your previous joining lines twisted before you start. Then once again, locate the correct corner chain stitch and start slip stitching them together. Once you get to the crossover, again, just continue to the motif on the other side. When there is an even number of motifs coming together, the motifs can be joined by crossing lines. But when there is an odd number of corners, we will need to add another line. In this particular spot, we have a path worked along the two sides of this square, and we will need to join just between these two diamonds. I am going to start in the one chain corner of each diamond and work towards the already crossed joining lines. Same process as before. I find that this will generally be a little easier because the diamonds here are already held in place elsewhere, but dealing with the bulk of the blanket gets a little harder. And sometimes these back loops in the junction here are a little bit tricky to work into. Here we have reached the end of the path, so we are going to fasten off and use the tails to make the connection look seamless. Cut the yarn. Pull up the loop until the yarn emerges and thread it onto a tapestry needle. Now I am going to work it under both of the prior joining lines. And back under the top line again. Then back down from where it emerged. Now it looks rather seamless on the front. Let's take care of the back. On the back, once again, I am going to thread it under both of the crossed paths of the prior joining lines. Then we can pick where to sew in and hide the end. I'm going to use this thicker part of the corners. I think right here, and sew it in so that it is fairly well hidden. And now it looks reasonably seamless on the back too. The one extra special case you will run into when joining is when three motifs meet. This will always be 2 diamonds and a square or the square corner of a triangle. There are 2 chains in a square corner and only 1 in each of the diamond side corners. When we get to this junction, we need to join both of the 1 chains from the diamond to the corner. Insert the hook into both of the diamond side corners. Then through the back loop of one of the chains in the square corner, and the second one as well. Then make your slip stitch through all of this with the yarn over hook and pull through all the loops on the hook. Now we can continue slip stitching to finish the join. You can use the tail from the join between the diamonds to finish off where they meet. What do you do when you get to the end of a join and realize that the motifs aren't lining up? Here are some tips for troubleshooting. The most common mistake I make is right here. If you look closely, I didn't start in the correct chain. This is the last stitch on the side, and this is the first chain on the side. I am one chain off, so I am going to rip back and redo it. For my next example here, I got to the end of these diamonds before realizing that I was one stitch off. I checked that I had started in the correct place on both, then looked at the back and stitch line for clues. Then I counted my stitches on each side and found that on D5 I have 20 stitches instead of 19. Looking closely, my error was here in round 4. I was supposed to skip the first stitch of the side, but I didn't, and now I have an extra stitch. I don't want to redo this, so I am going to fake it. I rip back to about where the extra stitch is, insert my hook into the next loop I want to join, and the next 2 on the other motif. Then pull through all these loops for the slip stitch. Now continue to finish the join, and you really can't tell there was ever an issue. This last example of an error doesn't cause a problem with alignment, but you might notice it particularly if you are troubleshooting. In general, I stay consistent with which motif I insert the hook into first, but if you accidentally switch, it will look like this on the other side. I have undone everything I did and redone all the joins with the correct color of yarn so that you can see this finished sample. I will probably do another light blocking before I add the border because it will help even out these edges. Thank you so much for joining me on this crochet along. I look forward to seeing all your progress. Please be sure to share in the Schipjes Facebook group or on Instagram with the hashtag Festival of Lights Cal. And if you have made it this far, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would like to reach 1,000 subscribers so that I might benefit a small bit from any ads you had to watch during this video.